I don't want anybody to follow me. The only master to follow is within yourself. And that is the key. To really follow your own inner guidance, maybe Christ, maybe God, whatever you wish to call that entity. But do not attach yourself to other people because they easily misguide you. The only real teacher is within ourselves.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Ching, and I have an incredible guest here today who is in many parts of the world considered a mystic or someone who's curious about discovering all things metaphysical and the way the nature of the universe. And he is very humble. He doesn't really define himself, but he's a creator of many things, and it's expressed through the way he puts his material out to the world. Welcome, Hans Wilhelm. How are you, my friend?
Thank you, Sen. It's an honor and delight to be with you and meet you here for the first time.
I know it's incredible. The universe continually brings like-minded people together, and they get to express themselves. But I want to have you explore with the audience more about yourself, how you arrived to this point in your life, and where you are now. Please share.
Well, in a nutshell, I am by profession an author and illustrator. I have made many books over the years, and my spiritual path, which I started when I was very young, when I started to doubt the organized religious teachings, goes back now about 60 years back, and I've done many different paths over the years in many different countries, and I have this kept to myself, but it was only, let's say, 15 years ago when my father died. And as he died, and he didn't believe in life after death, but during the last few days, we were with him. And I said that, I know you don't believe in life after death, but just in case the soul continues, these are the things which most probably will happen to you. And he couldn't speak anymore, but he smiled in a way. It's all right, that's your belief. Let me go my own way. Anyway, he died, and I totally forgot this. And it was only 5 years later when, by accident, a medium in a bookstore came up to me and says, who I've never met before. He says, "Oh, your father just came in, and he just wanted to thank you for what you told him, because it helped him so much on the other side, where he sees now so many souls arriving very confused and don't know what happened to them. And he is at the moment working on the receiving station of souls that have departed. And he asked me, would I please share my knowledge with others? Would I please write books about it? Because people need to know, because too many souls are dying and have no idea that they are dead even, and what happens next. So I thought about it, and I said, I'm not going to write books about this because I have enough books, and and people are not really reading the books than they used to read it, because we have got so many other distractions. So I decided I want to reach the young people, because the old people are usually set anyway in their beliefs. You can't teach an old dog any more tricks. But young people are very open to this, as I was when I was 16, 17, 19. So I decided to do YouTubes. This is now some 11 years ago. And with my YouTube channel, I offered my humble knowledge. And what I do, I draw the laws. Like, for instance, when we have the law of karma, we see how somebody is hurting someone else, and how that karma is then stored in the body of the soul of the person who harms, as well as in the other person, in the Akashic records, as well as in the repository planets, and how that eventually comes back. When I talk about it, it's all a bit abstract. But when we see it visually, it becomes very clear. And I found out that God is really ingenious simplicity. All these laws, spiritual laws, are basically very, very easy to understand if they're explained. There is no secrecy. God does not have secrets towards his own children. That's what I strongly believe. He wants, because it's very clear to understand. And if I can understand it, or most of it, then anybody else can understand it. And I use it on the level, as Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you probably haven't understood it yourself. So my videos are made the way for myself to understand the whole thing, and hopefully even a 6-year-old can understand it as well. That's in a nutshell.
Now this is really profound, because you're speaking on many things that someone at face value listening to our conversation that may have zero understanding sort of brings us back to a pivoting moment in history that I like to remind people of. Way back in the 80s, when talk shows were just evolving into something, right? So Oprah was on the world stage as the, foremost expert of talk shows, and she had all different types of people coming on her platform. And one comes to mind that really sort of stands out was Deepak Chopra, right? So he's sitting there and she's having this casual conversation, talking to her audience, which at the time were mostly what they considered the demographic of, people that were housewives or people that are just at home wanting to hear something insightful to inspire them on their day. And she goes, "Oh, so Deepak, how are you? Welcome to the channel." And he goes, "Well, my body's here, but I'm not." And then she went, "Okay, anyway, we'll cut to a commercial break and we'll be right back." And so this is so, what you speak on is so powerful, yet what you're explaining and how you're explaining it through illustration resonates with people because it makes them sort of go back to a state of simplicity, of a childlike state where they can understand and put these images together. You and I understand things at a much deeper level, and that's a great gateway to open someone's unconscious to something greater. Is that sort of how you got to that conclusion, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I make these videos for myself, the person who for myself, so that I understand how the dots connect. And when I draw it out, it makes sense to me, and it just it helps me in a deeper understanding. And I share basically what I discover. I have no interest to convince anybody about this.
Yes.
I have no mission. I don't sell anything. My videos are absolutely free. They don't even have commercials in it. They are for anybody who wishes to access them, and there is no membership or anything like this. This is information which was given to us by the spiritual world, and I share it for free as it was given to me for free.
Now, when you say shared with you, how did you acquire this insight? Because everyone has their own way up the mountain. I'm really curious how you were able to validate it for yourself. Because, I mean, that's the biggest thing. I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. Now, authoritarians might get a little scared when you give people that much power, but I leave it up to the individual. You perceive it how you perceive it, and until it validates in the core of you, it doesn't mean anything. As Hans and I have spoken on this, and to the audience, we're just speaking on things that resonate with us, and we're sharing it with you. And if it resonates and it is in the core of you, and you're inspired to discover more or understand more about these very things, then that's what will compel you to do so. So I'm curious, how did you acquire this insight? What was the journey that you went on that gave you an insight to the Akashic records, to greater understanding of information? Where did you get that from?
Well, I was a very unhappy teenager, and I was very confused and very little self-confidence. And that's when I suddenly stumbled on the transcendental meditation at the time. And suddenly, and within a week or two, I became a totally different person. I got so much self-confidence through the simple technique that I, with 19 years, left Germany and went to Africa to live in Africa. This confidence I would have never had before. And then I learned Edgar Cayce and Course in Miracle and many, many different paths, Rudolf Steiner. So over the years, I learned a lot of stuff, got a lot of wonderful material information and techniques from everybody, tried it out. But for the last 40 years or so, I am following mostly the path that was given to us through Gabriele, a woman in Germany, whom you will not find on the internet because she does not want any personality cult. Only her books are available in Gabriele Publishing House. And she channels from the seventh dimensional, from the spiritual realm, the material and the instructions step by step in a way that I have never seen before because of this utter clarity. And in today's language, you have read Rudolf Steiner or Edgar Cayce. They're difficult to understand because you have to read every sentence 3 times to know what they're meaning. Today, very clear. And all these laws, which I speak about in my videos, are basically explained in wonderful books by Gabriele and revelation she has given over the last 50 years. And she's still alive. But as I said, you can't really find out much about her. And that is part of this path because her emphasis is the same like me. I don't want anybody to follow me. The only master to follow is within yourself. And that is the key. To really follow your own inner guidance, maybe Christ, maybe God, whatever you wish to call that entity. But do not attach yourself to other people, because they easily misguide you. The only real teacher is within ourselves. And that is what she lives and what she shows. And her books are amazing. And when you go on my website, lifeexplained.com, there is a page of book recommendations where I list many of her books, from which I draw and make these videos. And as I said, the videos themselves and the material themselves speak for themselves. They don't need any persuasion. It makes sense or doesn't make sense. If either a person is ready for that understanding or they're not ready for it yet, and they will be at a different time, or they will learn the same wisdom through another way than just through the material as it's given to us to now. But this material is translated in many, many languages now. And as I said, there is nothing to join. There is no membership. There are no priests. There is no organization or something to join. It is totally between you and God within.
And that is the beautiful realization for where you're at the right place at the right time. As Hans is speaking to the audience, as I remind people that are listening, is that synchronicity and understanding where your information is coming from. I find that over doing this for about 30 years, most people become very lost. They have a glimpse of their reality, and they get a taste of it, and then they go looking for more. Mm-hmm. And with the platform of social media, this is probably the one time in history where you can absolutely be misdirected or confused.
That's for sure.
Because there's so many different ways to get up the mountain. And I would say that there isn't any right or wrong way. And that's more a Taoist sort of like mindset in accepting and allowing all things and letting them flow, wu wei, effortless action, realizing that the stillness is between yin and yang. We call the wu ji. Mm-hmm. That's all things, the mother of all things, Tao. So, you and I find it interesting because I get a lot of people that travel from across the globe to come to my temple in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And they're in this understanding. They have a deeper insight to realizing, because within Taoism, over thousands and thousands of years, the idea of it is that it's more a man-controlled sort of like belief system in of itself on a deeper level. If you go philosophy, you go religion, there's control. And it's not realized that the deeper epicenter of Taoism comes very much from understanding the creation of all things, right? Mm-hmm. The creation of the cosmos comes from what we call the universe, moreover, the creation of all things through the uterus. And people go, "What? This is wow! What are you talking about?" Well, there's a deeper understanding of conception to creation to evolution that comes from all these other numbers, astrology, understanding shapes, symmetry, sacred geometry, all these types of things, and they start adding them up. They're either listening to your stuff or they hear something from someone else, and they start going, wow, there's something going on here. I'm not really quite sure, but I'm getting a greater sense than probably ever before for yourself and myself, especially leading up to maybe the last 5 or 10 years. You can't find any of this material. Now it's very, very dense. There's a lot of different ways to explain a law of the universe, per se. It's like these are constructs or perceptions of consciousness. So, you dive out you have an out-of-body experience. Someone has a near-death experience. It turns into out-of-body. They discover that there's an astral plane. They want to reach out. They're realizing there's something more than this 3D reality. What am I going to do to get there? How am I going to get there? Then we start looking into that. And then all of a sudden, once you get out past that dimensional shift of what you perceive as 3D, all bets are off in how you perceive that. So the material comes in. And what I really want to reiterate that Hans is mentioning is this is about you. This is about your experience. This is about what resonates with you in every level, every sense of the word. What Hans mentions, what I mention, how you see it. It's all about your truth is the only truth. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you can only go by that. But this continuously shifts, of course. Our understanding is continuously evolving and growing. But that requires that we also use self-recognition. And that is not necessarily something which we are too fond of or even know about in this society. We both really accept that the world has to be as I want it to be. But finding our day-to-day inputs, which we get from the environment, from people who hurt us, who speak to us, or any kind of connection which gives us an emotional charge, there is self-recognition in it. And when we use the self-recognition, that's how we grow. We do not grow through more understanding. We do not grow by reading more books and having a deeper understanding and reading and enriching our intellect. That is not growth. That actually can be detrimental to our development because it can stop us in many ways. The only way to recognize is what is happening in my life right now, emotionally and in otherwise sensation and in my relationships with everybody and with nature. Right now, from moment to moment, I'm giving the task of self-recognition. Whether the weather is bad at the moment and I'm sort of cursing the weather, there is a message in me for me. Why I'm not accepting what is? Why do I not see the positive in it, etc. So from moment to moment, there are tasks given to me of self-recognition, and only through the self-recognition and overcoming the hindrances and the limitations that I have can I grow. I do not grow through knowledge or more intellectual knowledge, but
So,
only through to self-recognition and through my own work. That's the only way I can grow.
and do you have a method to validate that? So it's not I tend to speak to people. That's profound. Just that in of itself. Understanding it, on the other hand, is an experimental sort of journey that can be false positives and negatives are generated because most people assume that they are human. In of itself, the flesh and blood that they possess, that they believe is the true them, is limited by their emotional state that they believe is perceived between their very ears. So all this stuff is being generated, and I like to call it the three ingredients to your reality is a thought, feeling, and an emotion, and that's the sum of all things. That's it. And so where do you take that? What does that do to your simulation of your experience right now? So I ask you, what would you use as a method to discern or affirm what you're experiencing is true to you, or resonate with all things around you?
Well, I made this video, anybody's into this, called Your Life is on Rewind. It is my understanding, and I found that as true for myself, that whatever happens to me, I have caused in a previous lifetime or in this lifetime. Everything, absolutely everything that that I now experience, positive as well as negative, is something that I have set into motion. It's cause and effect. There are no coincidences in life. There are no accidents in life. So if I now suddenly get sick, if I now have a blow of fate, if I now lose my job, if I now lose the house, if I now fall in love, if I now, whatever may happen, is nothing but an effect of a course that I have set into motion previously. And now, right now, I have the opportunity to turn this into love, to let this go, to let we're talking about energy. It's nothing else energy. Life is nothing energy. Human beings are nothing else than energy. Consciousness is nothing than energy. And the things which happen to me are also nothing but energy. And I perceive it as often negative. This phone call I got upsets me. That's a negative energy. But now I have the moment, the opportunity, becoming aware of it and switch it over to love, to understand what was the good in it. What does it teach me? Where do I have to forgive somebody? Where do I have to make amends? So from moment to moment to moment, from emotional charge to emotional charge to emotional charge, I am guided throughout my life. And I can only speak from my own experience that when I do this consciously and realize that all these things which have happened to me are happening to me are there to serve me, nothing happens to me, but only for me, as Byron Katie used to say, then it is and on my own experience, which proves that this is true. This works for me. I'm not saying it may work for anyone else, but it has worked for me that I suddenly could overcome problems, situations, because I finally made the decision I no longer want to deal with it. I have to clean it up.
That is so powerful, Hans. So when you say it's happening for your growth, your consciousness, perhaps. And how do you change the direction of that? Some people would use a quantum model of understanding. It's a fractal pattern, and you're creating this behavior or energetic, like a road bump that replicates itself over certain cycles within your lifetime. That would be a sort of physics model. Understanding it more from, say, a laws of attraction, perhaps, where you put out something and you receive more of the same. Is that something you're more in line with? Or so if you're having this happen to you, can you change that at will during the same moment? Or is it something you have to experience and then you can learn from it and then change the behavior?
It depends on the situation. If somebody here comes in and gives me a bad phone call or whatever, accuses me of stuff, of etc., then I have to think about it. Is there some truth in it? And if so, if I've done something wrong, I have to do the step of asking for forgiveness. This is what Christ said, 7 times 7 forgiveness. It's all dealing of undoing our karma. So there I have to do the step of forgiveness. Or I have to do the self-recognition. That I really screwed up here. Or I can see also that the other person may be in a very state of confusion. And then I ask myself the law of attraction. I can only have this confused phone call because there is confusion in me. Nothing happens by accident. So where is the confusion in me? So I can again look at myself, what is confusing in my life right now? So to me, the whole world around me is a mirror. And and it's useless to go to a frowning face and just go to the mirror and change their lips up to make them smile. No, I have to smile first before the mirror changes and the world smiles back to me. So from moment to moment, and they're all different tasks. I mean, there's not just one way, but there's always an undoing of karma. And that ungoverned is usually a form of forgiveness, realization, forgiveness, you also self-forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, and making amends if I can. So to undo this relationship, because everybody who comes into my life there is a purpose, and very often these are karmic relationships. And if I don't, and my main reason why I'm here on earth is to set myself free from ever incarnating again, and setting everybody else free from myself as well, not to bind myself to anybody. That's why I'm saying I'm not a teacher. I don't want anybody binding myself to me. But the freedom is my main goal for my soul, to set myself free. And I can only do this when I take moment from moment all the situations that I'm facing from moment to moment and unravel it as much as I can. And each situation may ask a different form of unraveling.
Wow. So it's interesting. I again, everything is sensory perception, in my opinion. So you're receiving a message, whether it comes in any way, shape, or form, and as you acquire a higher level of consciousness, and this is just my perception, you start to develop more intuitive skills of understanding these things, which creates a greater awareness, which in definition is consciousness. So it continues to grow on itself, and I find it really powerful, the message that you have and how you've discovered what works for you in relation to the cycle of how energies are polarizing, and that polarizing effect of positive and negative within a duality creates an outcome, and then you can use that as a roadmap to decipher what's going on in your experience. And from what your admission of you don't want to reincarnate would then suggest that you believe in reincarnation, which is beautiful, or you understand that that's part of the process of how you are on this journey. Because people talk about soul contract, laws of attraction. There are many different constructs, and these are all, again, a perception of reality. I always remind people, it's like you've sunk your teeth into this. This resonates with you, and this is how you're going to enjoy your journey right now. And so it doesn't end or start with what Hans says or what I say. It's whatever you experience and you resonate as your truth. That's what I love about what you're saying. It's like, these are all just experiences I'm having. I'm sharing them with you, and you can discern or affirm them any way you want if it resonates. And so the karmic model is a really interesting one. How did you come to the conclusion that was such a powerful tool for you in your journey right now?
Well, it started very early when I was already 20 years old. I read Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner, and I suddenly a lot of questions I had about life, why people are born in poverty, why some sick, why I'm rich, and so on. Suddenly everything makes sense to me. The moment I had the module of reincarnation, that a soul comes here many times and maybe reaping of what they have sown in the previous lifetimes. This is only one of the reasons why souls incarnate. There can be other reasons as well. It's like teaching and helping. But if that is the main reason, suddenly everything makes sense to me. And then I found out later also through the teachings of Gabi, that Christ very firmly taught reincarnation in his teachings. And in today's revelation that he still gives through her, he always speaks about reincarnation. And that is a very important point, which the churches purposely took out, so to bind the people to them. So in reincarnation, I think many questions which we all have are answered. Why is there so much suffering? Why are some people brutal? Why is so much awful stuff happening in this world? And if we look at reincarnation as a possibility, I think it all makes sense. Why people are suffering, others are not suffering. It is not fair. I mean, we would think without reincarnation, God cannot be fair. God cannot be love. God cannot be compassionate. That wouldn't make sense. But with reincarnation and the free will, God is love. Because if we have our free will and if we abuse it for our own selfish reasons, and I'm hurting you, I'm stealing from you, etc., and I reap the result, the karma of also being stolen from and so on, everything makes sense. I like this one parallel picture which a friend of mine gave me. We are like fish in the water, and as long as we are in the water, it's just wonderful. We have everything. We don't need anything. We just love each other and everything is wonderful. But the moment we jump out of the water and are on the ground, we are totally lost and desperate and so on. And meanwhile, the water does not judge us. The water does not tell us what to do. It is our own decision to jump back into the water and flow again with the water. Because God is love. God does not judge. It's his own, and he just lets us play our own free will, even if we harm ourselves, to the point that we eventually are so under pain that we eventually turn around like an alcoholic who has to go right rock bottom and then turns around. For many people, that is the only way to return back home.
That is so beautiful. I mean, within Taoism, we call it all rivers run back to the ocean.
Yes.
The simplicity of it. And you know, Wu Wei being effortless action, the effortless effort. And when you resonate with that and you immerse yourself at a higher consciousness, all things become effortless. And so I imagine that journey of learning through the polarizing effects of karma within the duality, you're creating this consciousness dial. Okay, I learned from that. It's like putting my hand in the fire. Now I'm going to stop putting my hand in the fire, and I'm going to now remember that this makes me expansive, this contracts me. And whether that is in the form of karma, it comes out that way. Is that
exactly? That's why it says God is ingenious simplicity. It's very simple. There is no big secrets.
Yeah.
Put our finger on the stove. God says, don't put your finger on the stove. Like he gave us the 10 commandments. It says, so don't steal and don't do all this kind of stuff. And if we do it, although we are told not to do it, we burn ourselves and then we have the consequences. It is so simple. There is no big secrets.
I mean, this is very interesting. You draw on a point that's sort of interesting. I feel like recently, in the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a complete attack of belief systems, and first and foremost, it's cyclical to the evolution of humans in the last 100. Let's just measure the last 500 years. It starts with religion, and then it turns into an atheist sort of mindset, and then spirituality, and we keep going through these cycles. And I feel like there's a blending of two ways to perceive things right now, currently in consciousness for 2024. Is it a spiritual perception or a religious perception, or I just am perception? And so you're getting into these categories. What are your thoughts on that? You speak on God. You speak. I imagine you speak on some type of script of the Bible. How are you getting this information? Where? What are your belief systems in that sense of the word?
I believe God, whatever you call God. We are talking about energy here. Nothing again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When it says it's not a big secret thing. It's not that energy is in each one of us and in each living form and every sentient being. So God is in us. And if I would be highly evolved, I wouldn't need any books. I would have my constant inner guidance telling me from moment to moment what to do. I'm far from there. Therefore, the books with all the different tasks and reminders are helpful to myself. And that's how I make the videos as well. So I believe that guidance is in each one of us. We not only have the God within ourselves, we all have at least one guardian spirit as well. We have got the Christ energy in us. So we have got all the whole divine heavens are with us on our path home. So we are never alone. So we do not have to attach ourselves to anything else except to the God within. But in the meantime, there are teachers like yourself and others who give us some information we can use and try out. And only by trying it out, the pudding is in the proof. Or the proof is in the pudding. Can we see whether this works for us or not? And that's how I see it. So divinity is in us. And the Bible has, to me, three things, which has the 10 Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount, and the Golden Rule, which is also in all other societies of the world. So these three things are important. Everything else, forget about it. There's so many drama and there's so many false teaching and so many people fiddled with the Bible. So I would not call that a special book or God-given book word by word. So I made a video on that one as well. But yet in the Bible itself are these essence. The 10 Commandments are very clear to avoid karma. The Sermon on the Mount to overcome the karma. And the Golden Rule is a wonderful way how to live in the future. That's actually, again, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity.
And you found this parallels in other ancient script?
I will be honest, Sen, I have not studied other ancient scripts. I have studied, except the meditation at the beginning I mentioned, and then usually Western teachers like Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, Course in Miracles, etc., the ones from here. So I cannot speak about ancient texts, but I do know one thing for sure. By the comments I get on my videos, nearly 30% are coming from India. They all compare my stuff with Vedic kind of teachings, and I have no knowledge about the Vedic except the word maybe, but that's about it. But apparently, when it's true in every text and in every culture. Truth is beyond this. So apparently, I must touch somewhere in my videos the truth which other cultures can relate to.
Yeah, I would concur on that one. The simplicity of the Tao Te Ching is 81 verses, which people sort of either embrace or dismiss. And what we kind of refer to it as is the living scripture. So it morphs itself just like any ancient script. If you look deeper into understanding the nature of the human essence, the human being, that, on a deeper level, we sort of operate on numbers, letters, symbols, words, and they're integrated deep within the fabric of our DNA, at a subatomic level. And that's how you resonate or repel from whatever it is that you're experiencing in this lifetime. That's my perception. That's what I've gathered over the years, and understanding that gravitates to that scripture. So the Tao Te Ching is basically a diamond, and each verse is another facet of that diamond, and you're just looking at it in a different angle. Consciousness in of itself is just that. In my discovery is you and I are sitting at one end of a table, each end of a different table, and we're looking at an object in the middle. You see it your way, I see it my way, but it's still all one consciousness.
Yeah, and I think if we really boil it down, I think you will agree with me, it's all about love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So again, simplicity. We can use all the Tao, we can all the teachings together, love and compassion. we have to return back to our basic being, whatever it may be, which is loving or being love, which it's nothing else than an energy again. We have to return to that energy of love. And you do the Tao way, they do other ways, but at the bottom of all these truths is love. How loving do I become, and how compassionate can I become in this lifetime? Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. 1000%. My question to you is, how do you acquire that universal understanding? Because at a certain point, up until that point, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. So people can perceive love as razor blades and bunny rabbits and unicorns and rainbows. How do we get to that universal acceptance where that frequency is met equally, so that there is a repeatable experience and it's not sort of subject to someone's personality?
Well, for me, I again come always back to simplicity. For simplicity, love is expanding energy. Whenever I do say something, act something, and it makes me feel really expanding, I know I'm on the right track. If I'm using fear, anxiousness, anxiety, envy, I clam up. This is not the right way for me. My body, as I said at the beginning, tells me automatically what I can perceive and also actualize in my life right now in a more loving, compassionate way, by simply showing me, is it expanding or is it contracting? What I say, what I do, what I think, and what I feel, most importantly. So I think that's very simplistic. Then very simple answer to answer how I find and can navigate towards what my goal is, to come more to the more expanding, loving, understanding, sharing, and selfless way of life.
That is really powerful. Another question I'll ask you is how did you acquire that insight? At what point in your life, and what gave you the tools to understand those very mechanisms? What was the turning point where you realized, this is how I contract, this is how I expand, and this is the messaging that will give me a direct path?
Sen, I failed to give you a clear answer of how this happened. It was just only discovery, which is so clear. And I think I don't know when it happened. I think when I started to watch my body.
Yeah.
And a body being the signal from the spiritual world to my conscious mind, when it tells me, okay, this makes you feel good, this makes me feel bad. When I realized that gossiping, for instance, makes me feel bad, I stopped gossiping. When I felt the meat diet makes me feel bad, I stopped eating meat diet. So, and the expansive and the contracting energy, I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how I feel. I mean, it is so clear. It is so part of my system that I can't really tell you where it came from. And I know everybody else has the same thing. Once the people realize and know about it, they know about this. It works automatically because it's the same. It's an immediate effect. We know when we are loving, we expand. We know when we are not loving and selfish, we contract. And on
Right.
the body only grows in a way of when we share and when we're loving. And I remember Bruce Lipton gives this wonderful picture about. He says, remember, in your mind, depends what picture do you put in there. Your mind goes by pictures, and I have that in my videos as well. We are only thinking in pictures, and that picture sends a message to the brain, and the brain sends a chemistry into your whole body, into the blood, to all the genes in your body. And if it's a bad picture, it immediately shuts off all the energies in the genes, and it deteriorates the genes and brings out the illness which the genes may be carrying. But if you have a positive picture, and the brain immediately sends out all the right signals, chemistry to the genes of oxytocin and all these positive kind of hormones, and your whole body expands. It's a picture in your mind that determines what happens with your body, what happens with your genes. The epigenetic, as he calls it.
Yeah, the epigenetic model of understanding
Right.
is really powerful. I mean, that in of itself, people speak on it, and you are very articulate in explaining it from my perspective of how I see it. It's like a thought, feeling, and emotion generates an alchemical response. Pituitary, pineal, and thalamus create this chemistry, and then you use the culture medium, which is the messenger, the blood, to transport that chemistry to the appropriate gene to express itself, and then of course transmit a frequency into the field that is met with equal to or greater than that is realized. I mean, it's beautiful. And I mean, Bruce is sort of like one of those, he doesn't, I don't think he would coin himself as a poet, but you can get lost in his words when he gets extremely excited, and he's this love and unconditional love and acceptance that's just oozing from everywhere that he stands, and it's just like you just dive into it.
And he has your enthusiasm. Yeah, he can use words the way that the picture develops in your head very clearly. I can't do this. I have to draw it out.
Well, it's still this creative gateway, right?
Yeah.
I always remind people the only thing you need to be the master keeper creator of your reality is an imagination. And the people that really focus on that tool, that one tool that all of us have, are the mostly, generally speaking, the top 1 percentile of whoever it is that you look up to or admire in whatever it is that you're experiencing. They have captured that component. Now, they may be deficient in many other things, but they're able to create that visualization that generates a manifestation. Now, that may be on a surface level, just, billions of dollars, a hot wife, a car, or whatever it is, but then they have deficiency in many other aspects where they could really level up and be whole and be singular and be part of what we know as the collective, the universe. And so most of those people are the ones that will tell you having money is not all that it's made up to be. There's something more to it. And it's not until you acquire that you realize that grass on the other side is not as green as yours, yet you have to fulfill that and fill yourself up as a whole. And that comes from that discovery, and how you're basically laying it out for the audience today is so beautiful, simplistic, which I always remind people, return to a childlike state. And that's what I really love about your material, is you're creating illustrations that can be understood by even my children. I have many children, but most of them, between 6 weeks old all the way up to 11 years old. I have 6 of them. And so you get really excited. I kind of cheat a lot of times when Daddy has to do bedtime stories. So, we'll get in that. It'll be all a collective, everyone, all 6 of them together. Well, the youngest one, it's pretty easy to muse. But the other 5, you sort of start with syncing with their respiration, the first one, and you start to regulate your own respiration. Then you sync with all the rest of them, and then they attune to your audible, and you're just like, it's time to take a deep breath in and relax. And then all of a sudden, we need to go to sleep. And then Daddy can go back to watching Netflix or whatever else they want to get to. But, it's understanding that synchronicity, right? And so that beautiful, the way
authenticity.
Oh, yes.
The
yes.
kids sense whether you are not authentic. So authenticity, I think, is an important point as well. If your story comes from the heart, etc., that's the kids. That's, I think, the key moment as well.
What a great that comes up a lot. And so this is a very hot word that people, they tend to throw away in the spiritual world. The authentic is the new love, right? So if you're authentic, and this is if you start Googling it, get into the social media space, they speak on this. It's like, if you want to resonate, and I don't validate this, or I don't necessarily agree with that transmission, but it is supposed that most of these new spiritual gurus are using the word authentic as the access point that's higher frequency than love itself. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Because you mentioned it.
I've never heard this. If that is what they believe, good for them. I am very suspicious anybody who says I'm authentic, because we have got so many confused people in this society. It says, I'm authentic, I'm not cross-dressing and whatever it is, etc., because it is authentic me. And it says, I think you can go deeper than that. I'm not saying they are wrong, but I think there's a deeper authenticity. And there are so many people who do all these ego images. They surround themselves with, and they call them, I'm this, I'm that, I'm of political persuasion, I'm authentic here. But if you really touch them and speak them in the one-to-one heart level, you can reach them on a much deeper level. So I think the ego speaks very often, likes to tell the world I am authentic by being whatever the label is what is at the moment woke or fashionable, that is authentic. I don't know. So I will hold back here. I accept what people believe themselves. I have not an opinion of it. I just only feel I would be very careful to say so. Like to say people know I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual. People who say I'm spiritual says yes, thank you, and then I just move away. So that's my reaction.
I love it, my friend, because right from the Tao Te Ching, simplistic in of itself. If you act in virtue, you have none. That's just how it works.
In a way. If you try to tell the world I'm authentic, it says you probably have to look again.
And it's an interesting thing. I mean, our insight through our own discovery and exploration have brought us to this point of realization. But there are many people that are still attempting to navigate through this jungle of smoke and mirrors, per se, because there are many of them, and you may come to a conclusion due to your karmic contract, per se, as you mentioned, that you are detoured rather than direct access. You're not going to the Wizard of Oz. You're going on a side street, and you never get there, and you never get that realization. And it is that part where that realizing, okay, authentic, and that stopped me when they mentioned that's the new love. I was like, okay, all right, okay, yeah. Well, they sell it on the frequency, right? So they measure this is all measured on their hearsay, their anecdotal experience. Nothing is measured in a, well, they're saying scientifically it has a higher frequency, it creates a higher brainwave state that would create consciousness. And that, to me, I'd like to see that. I want to see someone express their authenticity, and then let's measure it with an EEG and see whether you're raising, high gamma brainwaves that create consciousness at an enveloped level where you can access theta, alpha, and for all intensive purposes, depending upon your spiritual journey, dive deep into delta and epsilon while your eyes are open. I'd like to see that. If that's possible, I'd like to see it. Like normally when I channel my teachers, I kind of stay in between 100 to 200 hertz. And for many times, most people have believed up until just recently, only 2% of the population could even evoke a gamma brain wave that would be a 40 hertz and above. Whereas now, understanding that the old concept of the 4-minute mile, well, if he can do it, I can do it, and I love that. I love that because on a neuroplasticity level, we're talking about the mirror neurons at the base of your brain that replicates whatever you perceive, whatever you experience, you can then generate it yourself. And that in turn is sort of like a deeper understanding of mirror magic or mirroring in of itself. It could be a spin-off of something that people might call neuro-linguistic programming. It's a very similar understanding. And I mean, these are all just interpretations. The journeys that you and I have been on, you realize that this has been going on for thousands of years. People are reveling in this excitement of a ketosis diet in 2024, and I'm losing all this weight. Well, they forget about the South Beach diet and the Atkins diet, and it just continues to go on. And let's embrace medium chain triglycerides and all these kind of wonderful things that come back to the same place. And we're just painting it in a different way. It's like if you enter the 90s and you actually believe that Ice Ice Baby was an original piece of material that was created by, Vanilla Ice, then you're surely mistaken, because you forgot, 10 years before, in my opinion, some of the most incredible musical geniuses, David Bowie and Freddie Mercury, created this song that he then took a chorus from and then replicated this song. So generations tend to forget. We're in this place where let's erase the past completely so we can't find our way home. That's kind of like my observation.
Okay, well, that's very complex.
Yeah.
That That's too much for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
need a simple thing.
and you know what? I love that about you, because that makes everything just as it is at face value. And that's where you need to be. And when you're able to really understand that that expression is like that, and when I always tell people childlike state, I mean it, because that's how you really absorb things, and you can create consciousness at a rapid rate of awareness when you're not attempting to decipher it in all these different ways. I'll go back to what you mentioned a while back about being able to sense it, to feel it. I always tell people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling.
Right.
And that feeling is a true understanding of that resonation. It comes from, perception, and that feeling, as Hans has mentioned with the audience, it's either I'm expansive or contractive. It's like, I mean, it's a slam dunk. It doesn't, do I feel like this, or am I just expressing this higher, opening? And, people tend to compartmentalize, and then they want to find a hard way. And then all of a sudden they're like, I just give up. And then they hit YouTube and, oh, Hans Wilhelm. Wow. Okay. Look at these videos. Wow. One after the one's explaining, karma, one's explaining laws of attraction. Let me sit down and enrich myself with a different perspective. And all of a sudden I walk away with an opening. And I mean, that's really
all you can go with, an opening. That's all I can hope to achieve, that people may be open to something, and then they take it from there. And then because they all have their own. I can't tell you how, if you go to my video on suicide, how many comments on there says, I think my spirit guides guided me to this video. So many in there. So I've got the other side working for me as well. Don't forget that there's a spirit guide. There are no coincidences. The coincidence that you should hit this video or my YouTube video is all carefully orchestrated for your benefit. What you do with it, it's up to you. I'm not saying these are the best videos in the world and you should do them, but there is no coincidence that you do hit my videos or hit another person's videos, whatever it is. Whoever's video we are connecting with is not a coincidence. Everything is carefully orchestrated for the sole purpose for us to wake up.
This is really interesting. You mentioned suicide. And all the times I've experienced that through my natural born life, every person that I've come across that has experienced that always wants back in. So they become earthbound, and they come back to me going, I was just kidding. That was a bad idea.
So I'm sorry, you lost me there. You mean the
the soul comes back, and if it's earthbound because it wants to observe the reason why.
Yeah. Okay. Happened, yeah, that's to learn the lesson again.
It'll come to me, and they'll be like, I want back in. It was a bad decision. I was deceived. Yes. I was manipulated. That wasn't my intention.
Right.
And this is a repeatable thing that I've observed.
Yeah.
What about yourself? Because I haven't seen your video. What was your realization about suicide? What was your message in your video?
Oh, it's a big topic. let me just center myself. No, very simply, basically, if we have a free will, and we can, and usually we have a certain lifespan to which we agreed prior our birth. We know how many years, but if we cut that off through our own free will, there are consequences. This is not punishment, there are consequences. And one of them you mentioned already, most likely we have to come back to finish our class. Now this can come from our own desire. I want to go back because in truth, I only committed suicide to hurt my wife or whatever, to hurt somebody. But anyway, you are on the other side, so you try to come back to learn the lesson. We have to learn the lesson. We cannot escape the lesson why we incarnated. But there are many different ways on the other side which can happen to a suicide person on the other side. Very often they are lovingly perceived, but sometimes they are so guilt-ridden from when they realize what they had done that they remove themselves into what I call a state of limbo, in a very isolated way, where they stay in a lonely, cold area until the day of their original time of death comes, and then they feel relaxed to return back to life as such. So there are many ways, and I also mentioned in the suicide is that you are never alone. It says, all right, you feel depressed, you feel etc., but think about the people who are you hurting. Is this really what you want? And so I bring up many different points in this video, and that we are never alone. And is it really worth to do it now when you know you have to go back to school again and do this whole thing from baby and so on, to do this whole thing again? Do you really, really want to face it again? Because chances are you will have to. And so there's sometimes people needed to be reminded of, I think, before they commit suicide. And it helps them to make that point, because we are so absorbed in our self-pity and self-hopelessness, which again comes from many, many cases from negative entities. It's not necessarily coming from ourselves. We have the vibration that attracts these negative entities, these astral beings who suck our energy and make us more depressed, or more lonely, more negative in many, many ways. So that's a point to look at as well as because you may be used by other entities so that you have reached this low, because they don't mind. They want you to kill yourself. They find this is a great idea. But are you puppet of one of these entities? So there is so much connection to suicide. I'm not an expert of suicide. Although I was on a suicide hotline for many, many years in Africa, and dealt with people who were in suicidal mood. But the percentage of suicide, as you know, statistically has grown tremendously in this country, from youth and as well as veterinarians and so on, vets, and they all are. Nobody can. Lots of people find suicide the only way out, but there is no way out. It is only a temporary stop. Then you have to come back and do this whole mess again.
Yeah, I mean, what a powerful insight. From my experience, I have one specific person that is still earthbound 14 years later, and they're just and they're happy. They're free from the limitation of the 3D world. They don't want to stay. They want to stay here and watch their loved ones sort of transform. And in most cases, it's not a positive thing, because it came from a place of, and people are like, well, what was the situation with this person? Well, first and foremost, it had nothing to do with money. This person was worth like $1 billion. So it wasn't enough. That wasn't enough to go, hey, I want to stay here in this 3D reality. No, I'm going to be convinced that the easiest way out is to stop the noise. And so, identifying with that is like oppression, depression, possession. And so isolating yourself is the first sign that you need to, anyone that I just need time for myself is as someone who would be consciously attempting to project and share love and unconditional love and acceptance. If you ever identify with that with anyone else, give them the opportunity to come to you. I would say, offer that embracing ear or hand, or just an echoing sort of like a sounding board, just so they have someone, because it just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So their realization is, the more and more I distance myself, the louder the voices, the louder the control, and the idea that this is the only way out of the tunnel. That's what I've experienced and realized over this lifetime. And those entities sort of are more transmuted whenever I deal with anything in the realm of like an exorcism or anything of that nature. It's created by their perception of reality. So you believe it and it will be so. It's just the same way it's manifested. It's like that is generated. There's, people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, if you have a love affair with Freddy Krueger, as much as that may look like some type of Hollywood character, it came from the deep, dark, seated sort of echoes of Wes Craven's mind. And now it has a signature. Whether you can tangibly touch it, it has a signature that if you connect with it over and over again, that energy will find you, and it's your creation. And so people are like, that's pretty deep. Well, not really. I mean, it's quite simplistic. If you think about Mummy, more likely than not, she's going to call you. And it's like, what a synchronicity. What are the chances of that? Think about your best friend, or something that I like to get people to wet their whistle with when it comes to manifestation is what I call the parking fairy. Have you ever heard of this?
You believe you get a parking spot and then you get it?
There you go.
My wife does that. Yes.
Yes. And I mean, the reason that it's so repeatable and it's so easy to do is because people are like, this is my little, it's my little secret with me.
But I always tell her, but you are stealing the parking lot to somebody else who needs it more than you.
And, you know, it excites people when they start repeating it, because human beings want to see results. They want, it's like this, what they call a hetero action. You want to start something, you must finish it. And it's a cycle of the nature of human beings. So you're stealing the parking. After the 1,000th time that you've done it, you go, maybe there's something here. You know, my little secret that I'm just playing with myself, and I'm not like making a prediction or I'm doing anything. I just have this little secret in my mind. Let me give you the parking space. And so you start validating it. And the commonality of that, the thing that links it all together that makes it possible, is that people don't have an emotional content. They're not concerned about the outcome because no one's judging them. So they're like, oh, you know, if there's a parking space, and it happens over and over and over again. Now that can be magnified on a much bigger level in your own reality in relation to manifestation and healing. That's when people get, when the rubber meets the road is when it becomes a little bit more complex, when it's associated to themselves or people around them, or there's a presence where they could be judged about the outcome. The ego, in my opinion, tends to interrupt the frequency. And so then they're not able to create what they can do in their mind quietly, manifesting a parking space or having their friend call them, or, you know, this synchronized sort of like fluidity that is so simplistic. But as Hans says to the audience, it's that simple. And it can be repeated from a thought that you want a parking space all the way up to an incredible desire or manifestation of whatever you want. Now, with Hans's model, you must also understand that there is a polarizing effect with that, because the only time I've ever been able to operate in a reality, I don't know what that is. This always happens to me when I do podcasts, these weird background things. I'm like, I've never I don't know how it happens. It just happens. So you do this thing where you're manifesting, and the model with Hans, with the karmic rippling effects, you need to understand that this is all within an understanding of how you perceive it. So that validation comes from Hans's experience. But I'll also tell someone this: if you believe that you can walk under a ladder and it gives you good luck, then it'll give you good luck. If you believe that it's going to give you bad luck, it's going to give you bad luck. But it's much deeper on a construct, because people repeat it as an affirmation or an incantation or whatnot. But in the deep-seated back of their unconscious, they don't believe it, and that's why it doesn't materialize. Or they go, oh, I believe in karma, but they don't believe in karma. Yeah. And then they go and do to others, well, you're going to get yours. And then they think, well, I'm immune from it. I don't, you know, whatever. And so then they go out and they do harm to others, and it gets repeated back to them. So it's sort of like this struggle of realizing, what do you really believe? True. Does that make sense? Or
yeah, totally. Yeah. It's there are many different levels of beliefs and how much how firm our sub beliefs and so on. Yeah, there's a lot one can do it, but basically only just keep your mind as happy as possible, as positive as possible, and the only way is to clear up the garbage which comes to you at this very moment with the next phone call or whatever it is. Clear it up right and then you can be expanding again.
And so what's the practice, Hans? What's your practice to do that? There has to be something, because it can't just be a thought. Now, I will believe you. I know that's absolutely possible, but could you give something to the audience of some type of like way to have an insight where they can? Because emotions make you very suggestible, and they sidetrack you. So how do you come to that realization, or what kind of technique would you use? You mentioned meditation previously. Do you have any sort of techniques where like something comes to you and you're like, okay, I can handle this. I know this is going to have this effect. How do you create that mastery, or do you have any tips for the audience?
Well, I covered it at the beginning. Bruce Lipton said this wonderful line: language was invented to hide our feelings. All we have to do is to come into contact with our feeling. What feeling do I have right now when this person passes the street? What feeling do I have when I watch this on television? My feeling tells me exactly, am I in this or in this kind of emotion. If I find something like this, then I need to look at it. Where does it come from? What is the underlying belief here? Whom do I have hurt? What can I do to clear up? So the message is always my own body, as I said earlier, which tells me exactly there's what needs to be done right now. I don't have to read many books. It is my body. And for me, of course, it helps to do my meditations. And very important, because we males are not trained to look at our feelings. We are just doing always in our head and always solve the problems in our head. But what helps very much, which helps me, is to make my daily review in the evening and I write it down. What went wrong? Where did I, etc. What are the moments in this life and this day which did work either this way or that way? And what did I do right and wrong? Is there anything I can still to make amends or call somebody tomorrow to recreate harmony? So a very simple tool is the day review. Don't wait for your life review at the end of your life. Make a daily review in the evening. I think that helps, and it makes you sleep much, much better.
It sounds like that life review we speak of. I think Steve Jobs has a one-liner for that. Oh, it's so bright, or something along those lines. So he had some end all realization. I think it was like his words were, it's much brighter than I thought, or something like that. And I mean, again, Hans makes a great point for the audience, is realizing that you can experience consciousness now. You don't have to wait until that is your moment to move on. But I mean, a lot of people tend to, as you mentioned, a God or Christianity or religion, within certain religious belief systems, they're still caught in that. Yet they have all these contradictive sort of opportunities, like your material, my material, something else, and it makes people process their reality, which I think is beautiful. It's most important to get the most out of your reality, however it is, whatever it is. Use that and this simplicity that we speak of, that Hans has repeated, and I want the audience to really understand the power of what he's saying, is let your body speak to you. And so that just in of itself is enough to set forward an understanding from a physiological level, that those very words are now going to be translated into your physical response to your experience. What contracts you, what expands you, the simplicity of it. And when you really drive into that, I use this sort of like processes in what we call have you ever heard of ideomotor response?
No, I don't think so.
It's like the idea in motion. It's a little bit more on the framework of a sort of an understanding from maybe psychological, energetic divination of itself, tarot cards or whatnot, where people are transmitting a message, right? Yours is really powerful because you're not using any tool. You're just like, this is really simple. It's like, I'm getting the answer. And a lot of people reside with that understanding, that intuition, that what the heart speaks is never wrong. It's 1000% accurate. And more people are replicating and repeating that message and finding that very validation. And then you're like, hang on a second, I kind of feel that way. If I think with my head, it's 20%. If I lead with my heart, it's 70%. If I get a gut reaction. And so these energy centers from a Taoist perspective are regulating these type of like hubs, right? And, moreover, you could talk about, Bruce Lipton, heart and brain coherence, that synchronization of these types of things, more from a Greg Braden perspective. We start getting into understanding that when that fluidity takes place that we speak of, the fish out of the water, the fish in the water, the flowing, staying in the flow of things, then you get a really direct messaging, like clearing yourself up, as Hans speaks on, having a daily review to be able to put things in their place where they should be and realize, well, this makes me feel good. This doesn't make me feel good. So let me stay in this lane, and I'm going to keep repeating more of this, which will then ripple out into my reality. And like Hans's wife, you'll steal a parking space whenever you need it. And then, that's the beauty of it, is it is as simple as that. I'm just blown away by everything that you've shared with us today, Hans. The art that I have a question. When did you discover you're an artist?
Oh, that I learned very soon. I mean, I was best. I was always good in drawing. Yeah, and I always wanted to write children's books as a young child, but I never did it. I became a business person, and then when I came to America and lived here in America in my late 30s, I suddenly changed my career and became a writer and illustrator.
Now, what kind of techniques? How do you acquire? I mean, this day and age, my kids would go, "Oh, AI, click, look, I'm Michelangelo."
I
You
was
know what I
lucky.
mean?
It was before
Right,
but
right, right.
today I don't think I could even imagine that career because the writing and illustrating is done by the computer. They don't need me anymore. I was very fortunate that at my time when I had my career, the computer wasn't so far.
And so, what kind of techniques? How did you grab? What kind of style did you? What
I did mostly
artists inspired you?
watercolors, and yeah, I just like to create stories. I like to play God. When you create a story, you create characters. Your whole story is like being God. So I just had fun, and then I illustrated it, and I was very fortunate to sell, and it sold in many, many countries, and it's still selling. And that is my basis, and that's my career. So all the spiritual stuff is a side stuff, although
Wow.
it is, for me, the most important stuff of my living. Yeah.
So, do you have an artist that you admire or you like the work of specifically?
Oh, I do have cartoonists like Saint-Pé and so on, which touch me, but I cannot. Artists I admire, Gauguin and so on from the artist world, but from the books, there are so many. Oh gosh, nothing jumps to me. No, I can't really say I've got any. I've got a lot of people whose work I enjoy. And here in America, the one person I read every day is Dan Watterson, who wrote Calvin and Hobbes. Because in my bathroom, I've got all the collection of Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. And every morning when I'm in the bathroom, I have a good laugh or two or three. So Calvin and Hobbes for me is my my life Bible.
Right, right, right. I mean, that they're gone are those days where you immerse yourself in that. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, caricatures, you used to be able to really get a lot of joy out of someone creating that. Now it's sort of like you taboo per se. You don't want to create a caricature of anybody in case it's not delivered the right way.
Yeah, it's not politically correct. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. There you go. Well, my friend, I just want to thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing your time with myself and the audience today. I have one last question for you. What is your definition of consciousness?
Consciousness is the same like God's spirit. Consciousness is the same like love. It is the powers of God, the laws of God. It is life spirit. It is light ether. Consciousness is just another word for it. Like you have got the name Sam, you are a man, you are a beard wearer, and many people can describe you in many different names and describe Sam. But the same is the energy of consciousness. We are from consciousness. Awareness is another word for it. So that is the basis of our being. This is where we come from. And this consciousness is continuously evolving and morphing itself into the various universes, planets, animal kingdoms and plant kingdoms, mineral kingdoms, and spirit beings. So this is the consciousness, the flow of creation. And this is where we come from. Another word is God's spirit for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And in closing, I'd like to share with the audience what's going on with Hans today. Where can we find you? I'm going to put your social under this very podcast. But what are you offering to the world today in relation to Hans? Illustrations, YouTube. Please share with us where we can find your material.
It's on YouTube. If you punch in my name under YouTube, you will come to my channel, or you go to my website. It's called lifeexplained.com, where all the videos are as well. And you can also go to my channel, Hans Wilhelm, about my work as an author and illustrator, if that is of interest to you.
Well, you've been very inspiring, and it's always beautiful to share a space with like-minded people that express themselves in my opinion, the true nature of consciousness, which is sharing more about being just one with all. And that starts with a conversation, and someone can take away from our conversation a greater understanding of their own journey and their own expression. So, Hans, I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast today. And I feel very grateful. I feel like I have a new friend.
Yeah.
And I will reach out to you in the future, and we can have another conversation at some point. I would love
That
that.
would be lovely, Sam. I really appreciate it. I love meeting you, and I wish you all the best in Las Vegas. I like Las Vegas because of the fun of it. So
Yeah. Well, next time you're out here, let me know.
next time I come there,
I'll
yes.
temple. Yeah. All right, my friend.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank
And
you.
I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Ching, and I will see you on the next one, guys.